This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid state turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's at geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Claudia Miller on the show. She is a career coach, and she's helped lots of clients get salary increases, new jobs, new positions, help to grow women in leadership roles, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. And with all that being said, she's going to help us today with some career advice and what to do. Maybe you're one of the people that just got laid off, because there's been lots of news stories about lots of tech industries doing some layoffs, especially of software developers. So we're going to get into that. And then she's got a giveaway too, which we'll talk about later on in the show. But with all that being said, Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I'm so excited to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a bit about your background and kind of how you got into career coaching and what is it exactly that you do.
Yeah, so right now I'm a career coach for women in tech. And since COVID, I honestly don't even like to talk about results before COVID because things has changed so much. My clients tend to land jobs within 90 days or less, even in this competitive landscape. And on average, they get a 54% in salary increases.
Wow, 54%.
Yes. And how I got to become a career coach is not something that, I don't think anyone thinks about career coaching. I didn't even know this existed, but it really stemmed from me trying to get better in my career. So I tend to be a type A personality where I'm that straight A student, national honor roll, I'm part of internships, and I did everything that I was supposed to do or was told to do while in college. So I figured, I did everything, therefore there's going to be an influx of interviews coming my way and they're all going to be fighting and I'm going to get paid really well. And, then my life really starts after that. And unfortunately, that is not what happened. Even though I had really great grades, I had internships, I had experience, and I had work experience, I found myself with one job interview. Thankfully, they offered me the job, but I knew that clearly there was something that I was missing. Everything I learned in school wasn't going to be enough. And that's when it took me about almost 4 to 5 years to finally hack, how to advance in your career. And it's because I actually started using business principles that I started on my side business I had at the time. And since then, I was able to pivot from finance, education, to healthcare tech seamlessly. And I probably only qualified 30% of the job description, and I still landed the jobs. I still had 30K salary increases minimum, and I was still very successful in those roles, even though on paper I didn't look like I was technically qualified. So
let me ask you a question about that. Yeah, interrupt real quick, because this is a discussion that my wife and I have had many times. And for listeners out there that don't know, she's also a leader in tech. She does on the project management side. But when I see a job description out there and I want to apply for it, let's say, I have no problem as long as I hit like at least 60% of the qualifications that are on there or responsibilities. Like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can go to LinkedIn Learning and figure that out. Whereas she'll look at it and she's like, I've got to meet all of these before I apply. What do you say to someone that thinks they have to meet every qualification before they apply?
Yeah, and it's actually very common. Unfortunately, for women, they feel they need to at least qualify 80, 90% in order to apply for the role. And there's some that would say, I need to apply 100% to the role, and then I'm going to feel comfortable I can do this job successfully. And that is a horrible approach, because what tends to happen is they get the interviews and they might say, you're too qualified for this role. And the other thing is, eventually, typically when people are job searching is because they're feeling unfulfilled in their current role. They're not feeling challenged. They're feeling they're falling behind. They're feeling stagnant. So if you go into a role and you're applying to a role that you could do 100% of everything, you're going to find yourself in that same situation in the next few months. Once you get over the, excitement that you're at a new company, different processes, within 3 to 4 months, you're going to get bored again. and you're going to find yourself in that same situation. And then you might start job searching again for the next position. And you kind of find yourself in this cycle versus, I mean, when you have 30, 40, 50, 60% qualified, well, now I know I can acquire at least 30, 40% of that knowledge. That's going to keep me challenged in that role. I'm going to feel motivated, and I'm sharpening that skill set, and I'm getting that competitive advantage.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I think, when I look at a new role, I'm typically doing the same thing. I'm frustrated where I'm at now. I feel like I'm unfulfilled or something, or maybe I've maxed out. I've hit that ceiling at the top and I want to go somewhere else. And if it's the same job, I'm going to be unfulfilled again, right? I've got to have something new added to it, some new qualifications, something more interesting, something that maybe I'm not strong in, that I need to get stronger in, that I want to grow at. And, so definitely when I'm looking at a job, I'm looking at it something that excites me, but also is not necessarily something that I'm doing right now.
Exactly. That's exactly what you need to be looking for. And that's why it is a crucial mistake to want to have to meet 100% of those qualifications. And it just doesn't do a service for the company or the employee. You as an employee, you're not happy and you find yourself job searching, or you just tend to disassociate yourself from your job and you're not happy, you're feeling miserable. And the company, well, if they hire someone that's 100%, they're going to find themselves trying to fill this position in the next few months. And that's when it tends to be a high turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you do? Like, what should a candidate be doing? Should they be updating their resume? What is your recommendations on resumes? Like having format, is it something that needs to stand out, be like unique, special, or should they follow a template? And I'll give you my take real quick before I get your answer. So I've hired a lot of people. I've had a lot of people come in for different roles. And the thing that frustrates me the most is when I read the same phrase over and over again on a resume.
Spearheaded?
Yes. So I'll read a resume that's almost the exact, it's just a rephrasing of the job description that I posted, or a certain section there. I'm like, this is the exact same thing that I just posted. And it frustrates me a lot. So what is your take on resumes?
Well, first is there's a misconception that if you're going to start job searching, you should update your resume. And when I work with my clients, that's actually one of the last steps they take. It's towards the end. And the reason is because I want to make sure that my clients can outbeat the competition. So we need to understand what are those skills that they're hiring for. So for example, my clients will start networking usually they try to reach out to someone that's in that hiring position. So let's just say they're applying for a manager of software engineering. Well, they're going to reach out to a director of software engineering or a senior director of software engineering. And I'm going to have them ask questions like, what are the hardest skills to hire for when looking for a manager? And what is a true salary range for this role? And can you give me, just because there's so many, salary ranges out there for this specific industry, what is something that, it's very industry standards? And you're not asking about the resume, you're asking 2-3 levels down. So people tend to feel comfortable. And when they give you that range of, well, it's anywhere between 130 and 150, then you can ask, well, what makes you offer a candidate on the higher end of that salary range? Well, can you give me specific certifications or skills? And then once we acquire that information, then we start applying and updating our resume with those hardest skills to hire for. We highlight those skills that tend to get employees paid more. And there's a lot of research and insights that go towards reading and creating this resume. I also have my clients, start listing achievements and identifying metrics. And most people don't have metrics. They don't know the impact they're making. So they need to go back if they're still working there, and they need to figure out and start extracting this information and this data in order to update their resume. So once we have that information, that's when we start updating that resume, the cover letter, LinkedIn profile, and then we start workshopping, interviewing answers before we even have an interview scheduled.
So tell me this, what kind of what are some examples of achievements or metrics that you would want someone to go back and kind of figure out and look up?
Yes. So let's just say manager of software engineering. Well, how many teams are you currently managing? Do you work cross-functionally? And if so, with what type of departments? If it's a, B2C kind of platform or an app, well, how many people or users are utilizing this app? What is their time for spending that time in that app? Or what is the customer segmentation of the audiences that are using this app? And as you can see, like all of a sudden we start slicing and dicing in very different ways. And usually what tends to happen is there starts a trend where one number starts really starting to stand out. Or it could be, throughout your career, you worked in across various different customer segmentations within the software engineering, and you created multiple apps across various industries with different customer segmentation. And all of a sudden, now most people, software engineers, are not going to talk about anything like that. They're going to say, well, I'm really good at coding and I'm really good at this. Well, that's what everyone else is saying. We assume you already should know how to do all those things because you've already made it this far. Now, how are you better than everyone else? Oh, you can understand and tie it to business impacts. Oh, you know this expertise that can help us increase engagement or retention on our website or on our apps. Oh, we've been trying to break into that customer segmentation, and you're telling me now that you have experience in that. Now you're more valuable versus, yes, I know how to code. Yeah, I kind of figured and I expect that. But what else? Why are you better than everyone else?
Mm. No, that's really good. I think, when I talk to a lot of engineers, they're always talking about like, well, I'm proficient in, Python, whatever language that they're good at. I know these JavaScript frameworks. I've, built some iOS apps and some Android apps and things like that. But I like the fact that if you can talk about, so I think back about one of my developers. We used to do this thing at my last company called 20% time, where you had like 1 day a week to work on something that's totally unrelated to the project that you were working on. And one of my developers came up with the idea all on his own. And this was, 12, 13 years ago when, we were just trying to get into pushing people to go more paperless on billing and things like that. And it wasn't, we had ads that we would run and things like that. We put little inserts on the actual paper bill, go online and go paperless. But that was really it. So he built a little pop-up. So when you logged in to pay your bill, it would just pop up and say, go green, click here, or no thanks. And just off of that, we kept the metrics of how many people clicked that and what the annual savings was. And that one little pop-up saved us like $85,000 a year just off that click.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and forecasted, and you can even say, and forecast it in the next 10 years, it's going to save, now all of a sudden we got this.
Like $1 million. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he could put that in there. It's like, I created this one little like pop-up that, my idea, I implemented it all myself, and it's saving the company X number of dollars over so long. And that's helps him stand out as a developer, not just someone that knows JavaScript.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about, one of the things that people I've seen write in their resumes, and you kind of said, is there templates? Honestly, I go based on the data because everyone has an opinion on resumes. You ask 5 people, you'll leave with 8 different types of resume formats. So I really focus on the data, and at least for my clients and the resumes that I help them build, for every 10 jobs they apply, they get anywhere between 1 or 2 interviews. Mm-hmm. So they apply to 20, we expect 2 to 4. There's around 20% conversion rate. So if your resume is not doing you at that level, then clearly you need to update your resume. And if you have a better conversion rate, even better. But I actually created this ready to edit resume templates for $27 for that specific situation, because not everyone knows what a good resume looks like that can attract the attention of like Google, Facebook, Amazon. And I know not everyone wants to work at these big tech companies, but if they can capture their attention, they can capture any other company's attention. And I actually had a client who was a data scientist and could not get an interview. Once we worked together, we realized that she was a producing data scientist. And we included that at the beginning of the resume. Guess what? Now all of a sudden she's getting floods of interview requests. Everyone fighting to, hire her, and, how can you come over? And they're trying to bribe her to say like, don't even finish that project. I know you've been a great employee, but come on over. And that's again because we're leading with results and we know what that hiring manager or that business wants.
So a lot of it is research that you guys do before you get to the point of rewriting the resume to figure out like, okay, you're a software engineer, but like, what are you doing and what is necessary? Like, what is the hot thing right now when it comes to, full stack development? Like, what are those things and what are you good at? Where can we take your skill sets and fit that demand or that need that's in there right now?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I didn't really have a question. I was just kind of talking about what you guys do as far as like putting someone in that role.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things is, and there's not a perfect answer because depending on the industry you want to go into or the level of experience or the level of roles you want to go after, the different type of size of companies, because they all have different needs and wants. Mm-hmm. So that's when networking and getting those customer insights, and it's just not networking. There's other strategies I have my clients use, but as we're gathering intel and we're going to pick and choose to know that these are the things that are going to make me stand out. I know my competition is not saying that. They're saying, I know how to proficient in Python. I know they're saying we spearheaded this project. We are not here for that. We're here as how we already know what the average people do. So let's take it to the next level. I know most people don't invest as much time on resume writing, or they don't even invest in someone writing your resume, which you got to hope that they also know how to write this. And that's where I like to use the analogy of like, we spend more time sharpening the axe in order to cut a tree instead of just going straight to cutting the tree. If you're just revamping your resume and applying to jobs, you're just going and just chopping off that tree. Whereas my clients, we're spending time sharpening that axe. That I've even had clients land jobs within 5 to 6 weeks after working with me, where they've been job searching for over a year or two. And that's because we're very intentional and strategic, and they're probably spending about 90 minutes a week preparing, and we're focusing on their job search.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So where do people go out and find jobs these days? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Indeed? Is it all the above? Or do you go directly to companies that you're interested in and like look at their website? Like what's a better thing?
Depends on the client. Some clients would say, I already know that I want to work with a startup, and ideally I want to work in health, so health tech. So we already have an understanding of like, you can search in Google top healthcare startups in the area or just overall. Whereas other clients might say, I don't know necessarily. I just know that I want to become now a manager or a director. So we might look at a LinkedIn, Indeed, but there's also different types of websites that are very useful, especially if that they're a little bit more concentrated. So for example, I have some clients where they might be interested more in like startups. We know AngelList, you can check out for those jobs. Or they are interested, maybe they're women in tech. Well, there's specific organizations that tailor and are trying to attract that type of talent. So they go after these specific websites that are looking to attract for women in tech. So there's different ways that we can look at those job positions, but it's always about what are we trying to achieve? What is that end goal? Do we have clarity? If not, let's find clarity before we even get to that point, in order for my client to even get to that job at a faster rate.
Good. Is there anything that you do to kind of try to remove biases out of resumes and cover letters and things like that may be inherited? Because I know sometimes, just the nature of people, we all have biases that sometimes cloud our judgment and block the things that we're looking for. Is there anything that you guys do specifically to help someone that may be struggling in that area?
I try to avoid soft skills in the resume at least. And even with interviews, it's more of we're trying to like, what makes you a great leader? Of course, we're going to talk about the soft skills, but we lead with a story to show there's a result and action around it. So in resumes, what I've seen a lot, specifically when it comes to women, is they'll say, great teamwork and great with communication, all these very soft, touchy words, whereas it starts depleting their value because we assume, most people, that if you're applying for a manager or whatever position, we assume that you're a great communicator, unless you show us otherwise. And we can figure out the rest in whether how you write that resume, that's communication, how you interact throughout the whole entire interview process. So those are just given, and we assume you have it unless you prove us otherwise. So why waste real estate on a resume using that time frame to say something that they already assume? Instead, we'd like to lead with results. And again, the most important area of your resume is the top half of the resume. That's prime real estate. And we know that recruiters will spend on average anywhere between 4 to 6 seconds on your resume. So we need to be able to capture their attention quickly. And we also need to keep in mind that that recruiter may not be an expert in tech or may not have a background in software engineering. So how can we help the reader that may not have any expertise or know exactly, can go into the weeds with you? How can we give them like a quick snapshot to let them know like, hey, John is a really great fit. I think he's a great fit overall. Let me keep on reading. And it looks like it fits the job description. And then that same resume does need to speak to the hiring manager, who will probably be a subject matter expert and who does have a background in software engineering. So it's really making sure that you talk to those 3 people. And again, the way you do that is making sure it leads back to the business. What is the outcome and why are you better than everyone else? And let's just assume all else is equal. How can you stand out?
So When it comes to resumes and cover letters, do you have a different one that's customized for each job that they're applying for, or do you just have like a generic one that kind of goes out to everybody?
You have maybe like a one that's more like your foundation resume. Like this is the resume foundation of it. You're still going to have to customize it. It's like saying code. Can I use this code for, all these different types of programs and apps? God, no, you would never do that. But maybe you have like a basic understanding of the code, right? Of a specific language. So it's really having that foundational resume and knowing that you are going to have to customize it at least 10 to 20%. And mostly what you're using is you're trying to mimic the language of the job description and of that company. Whereas some companies might say, we're looking for that, self-driven, ambitious, roll up the sleeves kind of person. And another company might say, we're looking for that out-of-box thinker that is innovative and inclusive and can really foster great relationships. Well, that resume needs to speak to that type of language and the words that they use versus another company. So you want to mimic more of that and making sure you implement a lot of those keywords and also to help you with the ATS system as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you have like a length size that's kind of a standard for resumes, or does it really depend on the career and the job that they're going for?
Maximum 2 pages, and they're probably not even going to read the second page, to be honest. And the reason is because resume is meant to get you the interview. It's not meant to get you a book deal. This is not a bibliography. It should not be 7 to 10 pages. And I've had clients that have 20, 30 years of experience, and we still keep it to 2 pages because no, they don't care what you did 50, 20 years ago when you were an intern. They don't care about that first job you had out of college. They care, can you do the job and what have you done in the past 5, 10 years that's in line with what we're trying to achieve at this company. So if that's the case, it should only fit maximum 2 pages. If you have less than 10 years of experience, it should be 1 page. And if you're like, well, I have all these projects and maybe I have GitHub and all these things, well, connect it, add a link to your portfolio or add it to your LinkedIn profile. But again, I always think of it, and this is why I like to use business principles when it comes to job searching. A resume is like a landing page. It's not going to give you everything. You don't have pop-ups at a landing page. It is just the landing page, and the goal is to either get your email or get you to buy something. Same thing with the resume. It is just there to get you the interview. It will never get you the job offer. And again, it is not for you to regurgitate everything you've done in your career because honestly, nobody wants to read them. We don't even read our whole entire resumes. How can we expect someone else to read everything in our resume?
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I cut down, it's probably like 6 years ago now, I cut down my resume because I had the same thing. I had like 5 pages or something. I'm like, what am I doing? And I said, I don't want anything that's not leadership on, highlighted. So what I did is I created a section called legacy jobs, and I listed like my development job, database administrator, things like that. I just listed the title and the dates and nothing more. Because I was like, those are old. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to become a database administrator again. I'm done with that part of my life. But
or related work history. I have some clients where like, well, I want to show them that one time I used to do consulting and I know the coding, and if it fits a purpose, great at it. But to your point, just the title.
You have to describe. You have to put all the exactly. I just did legacy careers. I forget what I call it now. But so when it comes to a cover letter, I notice a lot of applications don't even ask for cover letters anymore. Is that like a dying thing, or is it something that's really important?
I love and hate cover letters. And here's the reason why. Most people will not read your cover letter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unfortunate. And I honestly do hate, this is why I hate cover letters. Like, why are we having people spend time writing cover letter when you're not even going to read it? More than likely, they're not going to read it. But I have heard a lot from recruiters and hiring managers where they'll say, hey, on average, for one job posting, there's 250 applicants. It's just not possible for someone to go and read 250 resumes. And especially if you're hiring for 4 roles, you have a lot of work on your plate. So what they tend to do is, well, if they don't submit a cover letter, we're going to toss them out because we assume they're not as interested in this role versus someone that did submit a cover letter. So immediately you can get rid of more than half of that pile. And then they start going through, process of elimination. And I've heard recruiters say, well, that's not me. And I actually read the cover letters, or I really don't care about cover letters. And we are very serious when we say don't submit cover letters. Well, as a job seeker, I don't know how to figure out who in this process is okay with me not submitting a cover letter that's not going to think of me less or being less excited for that role. So I understand, yes, there's some people that are happy me not submitting a resume will not count it against me, but I like to mitigate risk and enable success. So in order for me to cover all my bases, I rather job seekers submit a cover letter that in case they don't even read it, but they assume, hey, John submitted a cover letter, Claudia didn't, I'm going to give John the opportunity versus Claudia because she didn't even bother spending, this amount of time to submit the cover letter. And when they do, let's just say that person does read it, that's when we continue highlighting a different type of achievements, or if there's a career break, or maybe there's something in your resume, you had a non-traditional career trajectory, that's when you can address it in the cover letter. So that's how you can use it to your advantage. And again, if you can't fit specific keywords in your resume, add it to your cover letter. It still works in your favor. So that's my overall overview when it comes to cover. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, for sure. So if let's say I'm a cybersecurity engineer, and my whole career I've just been it's individual contributor role, and now I want to get into management, but I have no experience in management. How do I craft a resume letting people know that this is something I'm interested in? Do I talk about like LinkedIn learning classes I've done in my cover letter, or do I just mention where I led a project? And how do you do that?
Ideally, I would want that person to have focus on this a year before they even try to apply to the job. Because if you really want to ensure success, you can't just say, hey, it's like saying like, hey, John, I want you to create this code and I'm not going to give you time to prepare, but once you're writing, I'm just going to give you a notepad and then have you code. You're like, what? I'm not even prepared. Like, I need to think about this. I don't even understand the scope of work. Well, same thing when it comes to your career. So let's just say, if you're an individual contributor, the rule of thumb is usually you should be in that role for 2 to 3 years max. So if that's the case, within a year and a half of me in that role, I need to see what is the next step and what skills do I need to start acquiring in the meantime. Even if there's not a management experience, maybe I can start taking a class. Maybe I can shadow someone. Maybe I can lead some of the team meetings. Maybe I can start building that agenda. Maybe I can start coaching those new onboarding employees or interns. And I'm building that almost tool in that repertoire to be able to show that in the resume itself. Then I would also start networking with people that just recently moved into a manager role, whether it's internally or externally, and ask questions. How were you able to do it? What surprised you the most about now becoming a manager? And asking the director, what are the hardest skills to hire for when it comes to hiring a manager for this position? And have you hired someone without management experience? And if so, what made you want to hire them? Again, it's all about acquiring data. All we're gathering is intel. So that way I know as a job seeker what I need to do, because it could be very different in every specific industry or different type of companies. You can't expect, one of the things is like, well, I want to become manager at Google and I have no management experience and I've only worked at a startup. Well, that's a huge jump. Well, maybe you are a individual contributor at a Fortune 500 company, but maybe we could look at a manager at a startup or a mid-level company, mid-sized company, and then we can start building up that leadership experience. But again, it depends on the strategy. And ideally, I would want, job seekers to say, after a year and a half or two in my role, let me start preparing for it. So when I'm ready and the time comes, I don't have to make up things or start pulling LinkedIn learnings just to kind of beef up this resume because I have nothing to show for it. Right. And that's what's going to increase your success.
So basically, we need to start doing things that are elements of that job before we even go and apply for it.
Mm-hmm. Somewhat, or having understanding, and it could be whether it's in your job or maybe you do some extracurricular activities, or just start building that and understand like what are the hardest skills to hire for. Because as we know, managers and directors, managers may still want to be in the weeds and they might still need you to have that technical background. But when it comes to a director position, you need to think more about strategy and how do you remove blockers for your team to be successful? How do you clean up and, make this productivity? And this could be as an individual contributor to say, hey, I noticed that we were backlogged with all these, Jira request tickets, and it was almost like 3,000 requests per day. I found a trend and identified that this was a particular issue. I worked with the team to, clean that code, and all of a sudden it removed over 3,000 ticket requests. And now our productivity was actually feasible, and our workload or that Jira ticket backlog was reduced from 10,000 requests to now 1,000 requests because of that. That is strategy. That is an example of you're thinking like a manager or director level versus, I just try to close these tickets as fast as possible.
Right. Right. I think it's really good. So let's flip the script a little bit. Let's say we're hiring someone. How do we, filter through the sea of resumes that maybe we're getting in to find that right person, to find that person that's really committed to doing the right things and is helping us out the most? And how do we hide some of our, inherent biases when we're looking at these resumes?
Definitely. I would say that's a really great question, because I would say, like, well, based on my clients, I make sure that my clients stand out. Therefore, hire managers immediately would say, look at a resume and say, oh, this person clearly has done really great work. They focus on achievements. Mm-hmm. But I also know that not everyone, invests or works with a career coach or knows how to write one. So I'm always kind of like torn between that. Overall, as a hiring manager, you should focus on output and achievements. And I unfortunately sometimes do think that men tend to do a better job in that versus women, where women will focus more on soft skills, or they say a lot of we instead of I. Yeah. We as a team, we did this, and we, led the team. And it's like, well, what did you do at that point? Because I only hear is we, I don't hear I. And I don't even know if you contributed anything. But overall, I would say definitely focus on achievements. And then also making sure, like, even on their LinkedIn profile, I read a stat that around 85 or 88% of job seekers tend to lie on their resume. So that's why a lot of recruiters, around 78% of recruiters, will look at your LinkedIn profile to see, does the information in your resume match? And it could be an 80, 90% match. We understand that this, NDAs, you can't be as open in LinkedIn versus in your resume, because there's only a set of limited eyeballs on there, versus LinkedIn is open to everyone. But it's really making sure that there's an understanding of that. And then when it comes to interviewing, have stories. Do they have stories to back it up? Or are they just saying, hey, I'm great at fostering relationships. Okay. Show me, how do I know you're great at fostering relationships? Mm-hmm. So really having them understand and asking those questions to really understand, like, are they really good? Can you give me an example of that? And I would say stay away from that person that is addicted to working. That like, oh, I'm a workaholic, because one, they tend to diminish culture within your department itself, because this person's first day in, first day out, and then starts making people feel guilty about it. Yeah, it could be like this person is not producing. They just don't know how to manage their time, or they have other issues that they're working on, but it can really diminish that too. They might just be that person that takes on everything themselves and then is not delegating it. And then all of a sudden that person's being burned out, and it can impact your employee engagement. And it's like, well, you're putting yourself in this situation. I'm trying to send you resources. I'm trying to help you, but you just keep taking everything over and over again. And now the team members feel guilty. And yet you're putting yourself in this situation. It's not me as a manager. It's you as a person are taking this on for whatever reason you may have. So always be aware of that workaholic person, because not only does it impact someone's productivity, but the overall well-being of your team itself.
Yeah, and there's a quote that I think it's from Tim Ferriss. It said, busyness is a form of laziness. And that's what I think about. It's like whenever I see the person that's always super busy, always working like all these long hours, I'm thinking, have you not like planned it up to where you don't have to do that? Like, have you not automated things? Have you not taken the next step and use your strategy and intelligence and not do all this busy work?
Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes within tech. I mean, you can automate a lot of things. You can start coding things, or you can start pulling out data to say, well, there's a trend that 60% of these issues are coming from this. What can I do to get to the root cause of it? And my belief is, when you're at a job, you should leave it better than you came in. You should not, once you leave the job, have the same issues when you came in. Your job, whether it's individual contributor or manager, is to make it better. How can we automate things? How can we make things better? How can we get to the root cause? And that's when you can start seeing a lot of promotions, a lot of recognition within the company. And that's what I focus on a lot of these jobs. That's why I might have been only 30% qualified on paper, but I knew how to get results fast. So I focus on that. And all of a sudden I was handpicked by the CEO to lead task forces. And again, it's because I focused on the low-hanging fruit and then identified, how can I get to the root cause and eliminate at least 60, 80% of these issues, and I can continue moving forward.
Yeah, I like that. You get that snowball effect of starting small and growing to the larger. Yeah, I love that. So what are some other, you mentioned a little bit when we were talking about, some of the I don't know if you want to call it traps that maybe women trying to become leaders fall into when it comes to their soft skills they write on their resumes, or using we instead of I? What are some other things that you see that may be holding women back from leadership positions?
They take on jobs without a salary or a title change. So I've had actually quite a few clients where they'll come to me and say, hey, I've been doing this job for 2 to 3 years now without the title, without the salary, and they keep promising me that they're going to give it to me, but you know what, at this point I'm done. I'm like, it's been 3 years. Like, and this should not have ever gotten this far. And my belief is you should not accept the responsibilities unless you're getting paid for it. Or maybe it's like, hey, Claudia, I found out. Well, let's have that conversation. Hey, John, by the way, I wanted to assess, I wanted to match and talk about responsibilities and match compensation regards to the increase in responsibilities. So I just wanted to do a compensation adjustment based on the new scope of work. But you need to be comfortable having these conversations if you've already let it get to this point. But do not take a job or a title unless they're willing to give you that salary increase, because then it makes it even harder for you to ask for more. And this is a situation where my client had been with the company for 10 years. She actually developed an application in her industry ended up getting a lot of awards and recognition because she did a really great job of creating this specific application. And they promised her the manager position. They didn't give it to her until 3 years later. Once she became manager, she found out that this is after she received a quote unquote salary increase. After she received the salary increase, she realized that her direct employees were still getting paid $50,000 more than her. Even though she had more experience, she led this integration, which was renowned and won these awards, she was still making less than that. So we had to work really hard for her to get that salary increase. And she had to hire me as a career coach to really help her and develop her confidence and everything to get to that point. It's not impossible, but it is going to be very hard, especially to do this on your own. And one of the things I see that over and over, I don't necessarily see that with men. I've worked with men as well, previously and now still on a case-by-case basis, but I don't see that happening where they're like, oh, I've done this job for 3 years. It's like, it just doesn't happen. I don't know, it's because either men are not accepting it or it's just not being offered to a man. But I've seen this case so many times with women, and now it usually ends up being a breaking point where they're like, I cannot stand being here. Either I need to quit now, even though I don't have any other opportunities lined up, but enough is enough. And that's when I like to say, well, yes, company, shame on them for doing that to you, but also you need to hold accountability. Don't you enable this to happen? And how can we learn this to not do this anymore? Or how can we identify this so that way we make sure we don't end up in those positions? Because at the end of the day, that time that, she was working at that company, she could have easily worked at the next company and made $60,000, $80,000 more, and accumulated that times 3 to 4 years. That adds up. And then now, not only that, now it just shows at her resume that she's been a manager for a year, where she should already been propping herself for a director position, and is pulling back her career by 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I think that's really good. And, as you're saying that, I remember one of our friends, back when social media marketing kind of first really took off, like, I don't know, a decade ago or so, she was an administrative assistant at a company, and they gave her in charge of the Facebook account. And then next thing you know, then it's the Instagram account too. Then it's the Twitter, and then it's YouTube. And next, she still has the title of administrative assistant, but she's also managing all of these social media things. Then she starts taking short videos and, editing them. And like, luckily she eventually, I think it's because of, people talking to her about it and saying, social media marketers make a lot more than what you're making here. But she was able to eventually have that conversation with her boss, get a massive raise and title change. And now she's the manager of that whole area. But, she did it for a couple of years before ever stepping up and saying something. And I bet if she never said anything, she would still be in that same role.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear, and I love this quote where it said, and I don't forget who said it, but it was like, and this is more also to like some of your listeners that are also managers or in leadership positions, when a hiring HR person asks the manager, like, hey, your employee's asking for, a salary increase. And they were saying, well, we can't afford their salary increase. the HR person said, well, if we can't afford their salary increase, then we definitely need to give it to them, because then we can't afford to hire externally either, because that's going to cost us more. And they're going to be asking for more increase in salary.
Yep, absolutely. So before we get any further, you have a giveaway that you wanted to point people to. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's my $10,000 word-for-word salary negotiation script. So I'm a big proponent of salary negotiation. Always negotiate for yourself, and especially if you're a woman of color, or a person of color, definitely negotiate your salary, because we tend to get really underpaid. Or if you've been in that role for 3 to 4 years and no salary increase, definitely negotiate your salary. So I've shared the link. It's a word-for-word salary negotiation script. So all you have to do is read it word for word. And I've had clients even get up to $30,000 in salary increases. So I want to share that with your listeners, so that way they know how to have these conversations if and when they need to. And they can always save it up for whenever they do start job searching, if they're not. But I think it's very helpful, and especially understanding of what it looks like when you're having these conversations, where it's not like I'm, being demanding of it. It's very nonchalant, it's very conversational, and it's been very successful with my clients. And like I said, at minimum, it will get you at least a $10,000 salary increase.
Awesome. And I'm going to link that up in the show notes too at ageekleader.com, so people can go there and find that and hopefully get a raise out of it. So if you don't mind, tell the audience a little bit about what services you offer when it comes to career coaching, and how can people connect with you online if they're interested in doing this and connecting with you.
Yeah, so they can connect me, find me on claudiatmiller.com. That's my website. Or they can find me on LinkedIn at, Claudia T. Miller. I share a lot of free career advice there. And some of my services that I offer, I talked about, is the premium wedding resumes. If you know you need to update your resume and you want a resume that's high performing, that has been successful, you can get the resume templates for $27. And they even has a cover letter template and ready to edit templates for your cover letter as well. But overall, the career coaching program, which is called 90-Day Job Offer, is where I work with clients and walking them every step of the process. I talked about sharpening that axe. Within the 90 days, that's all we focus on, making sure that we position you as a top sought-after candidate. We find your competitive advantage. We work on your interviewing skills, especially if you haven't interviewed in a while. We focus on your resume, cover letter, LinkedIn profile, and I even offer mock salary negotiation sessions, so that way they get practice and they feel comfortable when the time comes. And like I mentioned, on average, my clients get jobs within 5 weeks or even up to 90 days. And that's with a 90-minute commitment a week. So instead of spending hours applying to jobs where you don't see results, you could be more strategic and effective and get a nice salary base towards the end of it as well.
I think that's awesome. So I teach part-time at Winthrop University, and one of the things that I did with our senior students a few years ago is I started implementing mock interviews and mock salary negotiations, because the College of Business did mock interviews where anybody can go and do that, but a lot of students just don't for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And then, they graduate, they're having trouble with their, getting a job, getting an interview, or doing well in their interview. So I started, doing that. And then the next step was doing the mock salary negotiation part of that. And I think that's great that you do that, because it was like shocking on how bad most of these students were, for accepting something. It's like, we're offering you this. Great. Oh, yeah. You're not even gonna push back a little bit. And then sometimes, you'll say no to the salary, but they don't realize that there's other things that are negotiable. Mm-hmm. Pay time off is negotiable. Flexibility is negotiable. A type of, especially if you're a developer, maybe the type of computer is negotiable. There's a lot.
I would say in tech, you always have to get certifications, because everything is changing so fast. So I had a client that she was making $90,000, and they told her that the budget was only up to $140,000. So when the time came, her job offer was $150,000, $10,000 more than the upper range. So she already had a plan, and because she wanted to get her Black Belt Lean Six Sigma, which is a $10,000 certification, she asked for a $10,000 annual stipend, and they paid for it every single year because she wanted to keep updated. And I know in tech, there's always different certifications, new languages coming out. I mean, you want to make sure you want to ask for that continued education stipend, so that way it comes out of companies' pockets and it's a tax write-off for them, and it doesn't come out of your pocket.
Yeah, I think training's a great one to put in there. So I've seen people ask for Audible subscriptions as part of that. Just Yeah, you want to stay current with business books. Great, go for it. And it's a really inexpensive thing, but it's one of those things that if you can get the company to pay for it, why not?
Yeah.
All right, this has been great. And so just one more time, tell everybody how they can connect with you, and I will link all that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com.
Yes, it's at my website at claudiatmiller.com, and then on LinkedIn as well, Claudia T. Miller. And I share a lot of free career advice for all your listeners that want to continue job searching.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Claudia. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks, John.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some T-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.